Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to the adventurous Vaughn Manor, where Roger and I are back for the books that time forgot. Yes, the books that time forgot makes its return for one episode only, this one. So if you don't know what the books that time forgot are, the books that time forgot. It's a series of videos that Roger and I did a while back when the manor was under construction and a storeroom back there in the manor was transformed into a master bedroom with a bathroom and a little space for Roger's sarcophagus. So it was a storeroom for books, so I had to package all those up, box all those up, and move them. And I was taking those boxes two at a time and just showing every book that I own in this long series of videos that if you want to watch them, I have a playlist. You can go and check out the playlist for the books that time forgot. But here is one more episode because I found a box that I had missed and had been missing because I was wondering where some of these books were. They were in another place. And so now, another episode of the books that time forgot. Isn't that exciting? I know, it's pretty exciting. You're excited, right, Roger? He's thrilled. So I found actually a box in another little box that had the Shadow novels. I have a stack of Shadow novels that I haven't showed yet, but I'm going to save that for another video. Otherwise, this video would just go on too long. So if you're here for that, sorry, but I will do that video with those Shadow novels. But I got a ton in this box. So let's go through them. Starting right now with one of the most exciting things that I found, which is this Tarzan, The Lost Adventure by Edgar Rice Burroughs and Joe R. Lansdale, published in 4 volumes originally by Dark Horse Comics. So what the heck is this? So upon his death, Edgar Rice Burroughs left behind part of a Tarzan manuscript. So he left basically part of a Tarzan novel that remained unfinished all that time, or all this time, up until 1995 anyway, when Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated hired Joe R. Lansdale, one of my favorite writers, and a big Burroughs fan, to finish the novel. And before it was published in hardcover and paperback, it was published in 4 volumes by Dark Horse. And this is the first issue of that. And so the cover is by Arthur Soydam, and the interior illustrations are by Thomas Yeats, and they're fantastic. And so it starts right off. They kind of published it this way to kind of simulate a pulp. You've got the double columns of text and the cool illustrations. And I remember the story being pretty good. Of course, it's been a long time. I was, 24 when I read this last time? 24, 25? So it's been a long time since I've read this. But now that I'm doing the Edgar Rice Burroughs deep dive, I have this to read after I read all the Tarzan books. And one of the things that makes this very exciting is that in the back, it has reprinted a bunch of John Carter of Mars newspaper strips that were drawn by John Coleman Burroughs, Edgar Rice Burroughs' son. And they kind of start off, it starts off like the novel The Princess of Mars, but it kind of veers off into unknown territory quickly, from what I remember. And I don't know that these have ever been reprinted since this. Have those ever been reprinted anywhere? If you know, and if there's a book of these things, let me know, because I'll want to pick it up. But yeah, it's fantastic. That's the first issue. This is the second issue of that. Like I said, I remember it being pretty good, although you can tell Lansdale doesn't exactly write like Burroughs, but still it was an excellent book from what I remember. You know, pulpy Tarzan adventure. And this was the last issue of Tarzan, The Lost Adventure, and then it was all published as a hardcover, and then as a paperback with a terrible cover, from what I remember. So that was that. That was exciting. This was also exciting. I got some comics and art stuff here. This is Conan the Barbarian, The Horn of Azoth, by Roy Thomas and Gary Conway. And what this is a Marvel graphic novel based off of Roy Thomas's original script for Conan the Destroyer. So that's pretty cool. You know, before the story got all changed when they made the movie. Movie wasn't all that great, but the comic book was really cool. this graphic novel of Conan and the Horn of Azoth, the original version of Conan the Destroyer. So this was really exciting. I was happy to get this. This next thing is fantastic. This is RGK, The Art of Roy G. Krenkel. Krenkel, one of my very favorite cover artists, did a ton of covers for science fiction books and fantasy books. He did a bunch of Edgar Rice Burroughs covers, did covers for Robert E. Howard books. And it's just fantastic. Did a bunch of original artwork and stuff that hasn't been seen, and sketches, and these original paintings. This is a painting from The Wizard of Venus, an Edgar Rice Burroughs book. Beautiful, beautiful painting. And this book is just full of that. Here's the cover for the Sawyers of the Thunder, and I've actually got a copy of that signed by Krenkel. So that's kind of exciting in itself. And then you've got some of the thumbnail sketches that he did for the original paintings. So this book is just, I missed this. I've actually been looking for this, and now I found it. So how awesome is that? Here's another book I was wondering where it is, by Mark Schultz. This is Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, which is a comic by Mark Schultz, who is an artist I like quite a bit. And now I finally found this, and I can read it, which I will do. This next thing is really cool. This is Walter Simonson's and Archie Goodwin's Alien, the Illustrated Story. So this is a graphic novel based on the original film Alien. And the artwork is really, 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 really cool by Walt Simonson. I mean, this is just a beautiful graphic novel version of the film. Look at that. Look at that. It's amazing. And so I think this has been reprinted since, but this is the original copy, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Woohoo! I told you there's some good stuff in here. Here is a old graphic novel of The Moving Fortress by Dixon and Alcatina. And the artwork in this is really a trip, really a fantastic graphic novel from what I remember, just really, really, really weird stuff from Chuck Dixon and Alcatina. It's really cool. But this was one of the things I was most excited about because I remember really liking this character from Dark Horse Comics. And that would be Concrete. Does anybody remember Concrete? Do you remember Concrete? Concrete. This is the complete Concrete, which wasn't really complete, but I guess it was at the time this was printed, by Paul Chadwick. So this is the original 10-issue miniseries of Concrete, which is about just some guy who turns into a big concrete-looking monster and has some more, I would say, adventures that were more realistic than, say, a Marvel comic. This is more of a drama than a superhero comic from what I remember. But it was a really cool, really interesting comic book, Concrete. And that was followed up by the complete short stories, 1986 through 1989 for Concrete. More black and white short stories that were probably in Dark Horse Presents. And then you had this color series. I believe it's a color series. It looks like it. Concrete Fragile Creature. Concrete Fragile Creature. I don't think this is all of Concrete. I'm pretty sure there was more Concrete that was done after this. But it was cool to find those. I remember liking those quite a bit. So now on to the prose books. The prose books. Pretty exciting so far, huh, Roger? Okay. Louis L'Amour with Comstock Lode. His biggest novel of the West. This is his biggest novel of the West. And it's actually not regular trade. It's not regular paperback size. Mass market paperback size. It's a trade paperback, which I think at the time that this was printed was unusual for Louis L'Amour. And how long is this? It's not terribly long, but for Louis L'Amour, I guess it was. It's 370 something pages. But you know, it's his biggest novel of the West, Comstock Lode, which I don't think I ever read. So one more book that I could read for June on the Range. So this was kind of exciting, actually. And speaking of westerny stuff, I've got The Big Sky by A.B. Guthrie Jr. This is a hardcover copy of The Big Sky, which I've got a receipt in here. I bought this at Shakespeare and Company on Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley, August 16th, 2002. That is a bookstore, Shakespeare and Company, that no longer exists in Berkeley. That has been gone for a long time. But it was cool to find this, The Big Sky. Got a little map in there. So, again, that's actually a book. I don't think I ever read this. I don't know why, but here it is, and I really ought to read it. So there's that. Here's a book I've read, and I've actually talked about this book on this channel. This is The Rim of Morning, Two Tales of Cosmic Horror by William Sloane, introduction by Stephen King. This has two novels in it. The two novels that William Sloane wrote of cosmic horror, To Walk the Night and The Edge of Running Water. Both are really, really good. And this is cosmic horror that was written back in the 1930s, which is very different from the kind of cosmic horror that you would read from Lovecraft. They're both really, really good books. I think To Walk the Night is better, but they're both really good and well worth reading. And if you ever have a chance to find a copy of this, buy it. Just buy it, because it's a great book. Highly recommend it, and I'm glad to have found it again. Like I said, I think I talked about this when my channel first started. One of my first videos was like a horror recommendations video, and I talked about this. I talked about that book, and then here's another old book. This is From the Earth to the Moon by Jules Verne. This is an old copy of From the Earth to the Moon. When was this published? Does it even say? Pages are falling out of this thing. I don't know. It's very old, From the Earth to the Moon. And it's got this cool old-timey illustration in the front. So, you know, Jules Verne's in this box. That was pretty cool. Now, this was particularly exciting. This is The Beasts of Tarzan, which is a book I just read. But this is the old-timey edition with all of the original illustrations in it. And there are some great illustrations in this book. I really wish I had known where this copy was when I literally just read this book, because it would have been more fun to read it in this edition with all of these great illustrations in it. And these illustrations were done by... Okay, it's got to say who did the illustrations. It doesn't. And I should remember his name, because I know who the artist is, but I'm not remembering. So hopefully I'll remember to put it down here somewhere if I can't find it. And I can't find it. Darn it. Great artist, though. I mean, some of these illustrations are really, really cool. So yeah, The Beasts of Tarzan, the book I just read for the Edgar Rice Burroughs Deep Dive. Then I found Henry James, The Portrait of a Lady. Oh, Henry James, I don't know why this book always has that effect on me. I don't know what it is. Anyway, here's something a little more exciting. Here is John Buchan, The 39 Steps. The 39 Steps! By John... This guy. Buchan? I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce anybody's name. But here's the 39 Steps. It's really cool. So there's that. And then, let me move some things around. Okay. The Oxbow Incident, which I have another version of this now in the Library of America. So I guess I don't need this old copy of the Oxbow Incident. This is the modern library edition of the Oxbow Incident by Walter Van Tilburg Clark. Another great old Western novel. Then there's this old paperback of The Three Musketeers, Alexandre Dumas. And this is translated by Jacques Le Clerc. An introduction by Alan First. And the one thing I remember about this translation is that the translator screwed up at one point and screwed up on some dialogue and had a character, I don't remember which characters they were, but one character said some dialogue and it was supposed to be dialogue from another character. And so there was that kind of mistake in this that was never corrected by the editors. So, you know, there's that. I remember that from this edition. And now, Jeff Vandermeer's Annihilation. Now, I have the Annihilation trilogy in hardcover, but this is how I originally read it. This is Annihilation, the first book. Then we have Authority by Jeff Vandermeer. I actually like these books. I know these books have gotten mixed reviews. Just accept it. Accept this trilogy, Acceptance by Jeff Vandermeer. I like this trilogy. It was really weird. It might have been too weird, but I liked it. M.R. James collected ghost stories. So this is all the ghost stories by M.R. James. This is all of them. Have this from Oxford, great Oxford book there. And this one is particularly great. This is Gothic Tales by Arthur Conan Doyle. So this is a collection of horror stories from Arthur Conan Doyle, which is awesome. I'm really glad to have found this one. Look at that creepy cover of the creepy person peering through the doorway there. Creepy stuff. Glad to have found that. Next, Robert E. Howard, Marchers of Valhalla. This is one of Robert E. Howard's better books, or one of the better reprints of Robert E. Howard's books. Marchers of Valhalla. This was a really cool edition from Berkeley. Yeah, it's a Berkeley book. Next. Oh, do we have some... What do we have in here next? We have The Orpheus Project by Daniel H. Gower. And this was from Dell, the Abyss line. This is Dell's Abyss line, which is trying to carry on kind of the paperback from hell tradition into the 90s. I don't remember much about this book. I read it, but I don't remember much about it, so I can't really tell you if it was any good or not. Sorry, guys. Then, classics. We've got an old paperback copy of Herman Melville's Marty. Pretty cool old paperback copy of Marty. Again, I don't need it because I have this in the Library of America, but it's cool to have the paperback and to have found that. Next, we've got Great Stories by Chekhov, an old Dell paperback of Great Stories by Chekhov. Next, we've got this book, The Sound and the Fury. I hate that book. Next, we've got a book I like a lot more. This is Cervantes, Don Quixote. Sorry for all you Faulkner fans. Every time I see that book, I have to throw it. Cervantes, Don Quixote. Big Signet Classics edition of Don Quixote, which I'm going to have to read again one of these days. Next, we've got some really cool stuff. We've got some Fritz Leiber and his Fafford and the Grey Mouser. Fafford and the Grey Mouser. I've been looking for these. Here they are. So this is the first Fafford and Grey Mouser book from Fritz Leiber. This is Swords Against Deviltry. This is really cool. I'm really glad to have found this. And I have the rest of them here too. It's the second book. This is Swords Against Death. Swords Against Death is the second book. Next we have Swords in the Mist. Swords in the Mist. Swords Against Wizardry. This is the fourth book, Swords Against Wizardry. I gotta read all of these again. This is a really interesting cover. The Swords of Lankhmar. The Swords of Lankhmar. Who is that dude? I don't remember. It's been a while. The Swords of Lankhmar. This is from a different edition. This is Swords and Ice Magic. This was at one time the last book in the series, Swords and Ice Magic, but then they came out with this one. This is The Knight and Knave of Swords by Fritz Leiber. This is this still the last book in Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, or was there one that came out after this? I don't know. I just know that this is not how I pictured these characters. Different version of these characters. And next, more classics. We've got the Golden Bull by the Golden Bull by Henry James. Here it is. It's the Golden Bull. It's the Golden Bull. That's what that is. Next, we've got a really excellent book. This is Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. Of course, I've got a hardcover edition of this, but here's an old paperback that's in this box. Some of these I'm probably going to get rid of, but not this next one. This next one's staying here forever. This is The Son of the White Wolf by Robert E. Howard, and it's a really nice edition of it too. So this is some of his El Borak Desert Adventures. Robert E. Howard's El Borak Desert Adventures. Look at that great Kelly cover. That's fantastic. Good stuff. Robert E. Howard, he has to show up. And all of these boxes from the Books That Time Forgot. And here he is again with The Lost Valley of Iskander. The Lost Valley of Iskander. Here we go. More desert adventures. And to finish it off, we've got The Swords of Shahrazar. The Swords of Shahrazar. I remember buying this in... Where did I buy this? I bought this... I don't remember the bookstore, but I'm remembering specifically when I bought it. It was so long ago. It was it Grey Wolf Books in San Leandro? Does anybody remember Grey Wolf Books from San Leandro? It was this huge warehouse just full of books. It was awesome. Not there anymore. But at one time it was amazing. And Swords of Shahrazar. Next, if I can dig this out, this is the Decameron. The Decameron. This is the big fatty paperback of Giovanni Boccaccio's Decameron. So yeah, the next time I read it, it'll probably be in this paperback. There you go. So that was cool. Now here's a book I've been looking for forever. That is this one, Bram Stoker's Dracula's Guest and Other Weird Stories. I actually was doing a series called Sunday Penguin, the Sunday Penguin, for a while. And I had to do my Sunday Penguin on this without this copy because I didn't know where it was. Because I'd stashed it in this box, which I misplaced. But here it is. Here's my copy. And it also has the Lair of the White Worm in here too. So there you go. Finally found this book. Happy to have found it too. Next, The Killer Angels. The Killer Angels by Michael Shara. The Killer Angels. I did read this, but it was a long time ago, so I'm probably due for a reread on that. Oh, I was going to send these, if I found them, to my good pal David Wiley. I don't know if I already sent him a copy of this. This is Death Angel's Shadow by Carl Edward Wagner. I can't remember. No, I didn't. I don't think I did. I sent him a different collection. So this is Death Angel's Shadow. Of course, I have all of these in hardcover, and I have all of these as ebooks as well. And this is Bloodstone. Bloodstone, which I believe was the first... Was this the first novel of Kane? I think it was. At least in the hardcover edition, this is the first one in the hardcover set. So there you go. Great cover. Bloodstone by Carl Edward Wagner. Great writer. Happy to have found those. Here's Ambrose Bierce, In the Midst of Life. Ambrose Bierce. Have all these stories elsewhere, but it was cool to find this old paperback copy of Ambrose Bierce, In the Midst of Life. That was cool. Second Foundation. Just randomly in this box. Second Foundation, here it is. Which I got for 50 cents on clearance at Half Price Books. That was a good price. Here is David Morell's The Totem. I've got 2 copies of this now, so I'm going to have to send one out. I have my original copy, and then Juan at Played by Vision sent me a copy too, along with a bunch of other books. So I have a spare copy, which I'll send out to somebody at some point. David Morell's The Totem. Excellent horror novel from the author of First Blood. Next, Caesar's Civil War. This is an old Penguin edition of Caesar's The Civil War. So this was pretty cool. We've got The House of Mirth. The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. Another clearance book I got for $1. Well worth it, I would say. Then I have this old Thomas Hardy, The Return of the Native. This cool old paperback of The Return of the Native. I like this one. I like the artwork on it. It's really cool. That one was cool. More Robert E. Howard, The Iron Man. This is some of his boxing stories. I have another edition of this, but this copy is actually in better shape, except for the terribly placed sticker from the bookshop in Hayward, which I don't think exists anymore. I think that one's gone too. Most of the bookstores I used to shop at are long gone, I think. But this is The Iron Man from Robert E. Howard, boxing stories. Now this one I've never read. This is Once an Eagle by Anton Meyer. I've gotten mixed reviews on this. Now it's an awful big book to read when you've gotten mixed reviews on it. Some people say it's great, some people say it's not. Have you read this book? Let me know what you think if you've read it. Because I've got it. I'm on a 500 book challenge. I might as well read all the books that I haven't read. Now this is an excellent edition of The Mysterious Island, so I was really happy to find this. This is another book I've been looking for. Jules Verne, translated by Jordan Stump of The Mysterious Island. This edition is really cool, has all the original illustrations in it. So if you're going to read The Mysterious Island, this is the way to read it. With all the original illustrations, a newer translation that doesn't cut anything out or change anybody's name. I don't think it changes anybody's name. The American or the English edition did. So there's that. A couple more left. We've got The Ambassadors from Henry James. More thrilling work from Henry James. I got a lot of Henry James. Jane Austen, Persuasion. This is Jane Austen's Persuasion. She was a horror writer from way back. She used to write about zombies and sea monsters. I don't know what kind of monsters are in Persuasion, but man, I've got to read it. So there's that. And now we're going to finish off with a Wordsworth classic. I like these old cheap Wordsworths. This is The Collected Stories of Saki. The Collected Stories of Saki. His stories are really, really good. If you've read any anthology ever, you've probably read some of this guy's stories. I highly recommend them. If you haven't, they're available in cheap old copies like this, which I got for $3.98 at Half Price Books. So yeah, Hector Hugh Monroe, otherwise known as Saki, his collected stories. There you go. That was a lot. That took almost a half an hour. Hope you enjoyed it. This is it, I think. I don't think we're going to have any more books that time forgot for a while. Unless there's another box I haven't found, which I guess is possible, knowing me and my tremendous organizational skills. Okay, guys, I will catch you next time.